Hi, I'm Karl Vaters, and welcome to the Church Lobby Conversations on Faith and Ministry. My guest in this episode is Jason Moore, and we're going to talk about using AI without losing your soul. And this is going to actually be a very practical episode. It seems like, well, it was a little over a year ago that AI came into our lives, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it seemed to be everywhere. So, in this conversation with Jason, we talk about what AI is. We talk about why it just came out of nowhere all of a sudden and everybody's using it everywhere. And we're going to talk about some of its strengths and some of its weaknesses and dangers as well. But we're going to spend the bulk of this episode talking about how to actually use it. And what's going to happen is Jason physically walks me through AI by showing me his screen at home, and he enters ideas in there. He goes back to some old projects that he's working on. So we actually physically get to see how to use AI, because I have not used AI before. I've intentionally avoided using it so that I would be completely brand new to this when I did this with Jason, so that I'd be able to ask the kind of questions that you might ask if you've never used AI before at all. Now, don't forget to stick around at the end. As I've mentioned recently in my podcast, at the end, I'm not just going to come back with a summary like I've been doing before, but especially with a topic like AI, I'm going to come back with some of my initial thoughts and some of my feelings about AI that might be similar to yours, that add to the conversation that we had with Jason. So make sure you stick around for that at the end. Well, Jason, welcome back to the podcast.
It is good to be back with you, Karl.
Time I turn around, you seem to be on the cutting edge of whatever brand new tech thing is out there. I'm not sure if you're that much smarter, or if you're just that much younger than me, or if you actually just care about it more than I care about it. But yeah,
Well,
you go ahead.
I was just going to say I've always kind of had a bent toward using the latest and greatest technology in ministry. I got my start at a church that was sort of known for being a pioneer in using media and screens and technology and worship and that kind of thing. And so it's just kind of always stuck with me throughout my career in ministry.
I love about the way you approach this is you do very much have churches of all sizes in mind, and you have a great way of kind of demystifying and lowering the scare level of things down quite a bit. So we're going to talk about what everybody seems to be talking about lately, but we obviously, as we always do, are going to come at it really primarily for the small church perspective. But for anybody who hasn't really used AI, I think is going to be helpful today, including me. So here's the deal. I'm going into this on purpose, completely ignorant. Like, there have been several times over the last 6 months that I thought, you know what, I need to get on and explore and see. And then I thought, no, I'm going to talk to Jason, and I want to be where maybe most of the audience is, that I haven't even touched it because I'm scared or whatever, so that I can actually experience it through you teaching it for the first time. But before we actually do that, and we are going to actually, you're actually going to show us on a screen how it gets used. I have a handful of questions I want to start with to kind of prepare the ground for this. So let's start out with a
All right.
really basic question. What is AI? What is artificial intelligence?
Well, it's a great question. Artificial intelligence is basically the simulation of human intelligence by machine. So it is basically the computer thinking like us and as best it can. And right now, at least for the time being, it can't actually do that. But that's where things seem to be headed. There's what is called artificial general intelligence, and then there is artificial super intelligence. And so kind of two categories are what is known as weak AI, which is the kind of AI that exists right now. Weak AI requires a human being to drive it. So the computer right now can't make any decisions on its own. It requires human input to generate images and text and all those kind of things. Strong AI, this idea of super intelligence, is when the AI or the computers would surpass the human brain. Some of you may have heard the story a few weeks ago about OpenAI, which is the company that makes ChatGPT. They, Sam Altman, who was the founder and CEO, apparently there was some technology that was happening kind of behind the scenes that made it sound like we may be approaching or nearing this idea of artificial superintelligence, which kind of freaked people out a little bit. And so, we don't know exactly where all that will land, but that's sort of like the Matrix and all those other things, Terminator and all that. When the computer becomes self-aware and starts.
Yeah, it all sounds completely terrifying from every one of those movies.
Even for me, and I spend time in it every day, and I'm teaching on it, and I'm writing about it, and all those kind of things. I have some nervousness about all of that too. So, the thing I think we all have to be considerate of is that this is not going away. They're not going to stop it. And so I think it's important that we in the church understand it, because anybody that we're ministering to is going to live in a world where AI is so woven into the fabric of the world that we live in and into our society that I think it's up to us to help people navigate faith and even just daily life. Just think about how much things have changed. I know a lot of people that now order their groceries online, and there's DoorDash, and there's online education, and just all these different things that require technology. And just about every technological advancement and application and all that is now talking about powered by AI now, and everybody's figuring out how are they using AI in their work. So I think we have a choice to not bury our heads in the sand, and really grab this thing and figure out how do we use it in the church. And I think what is particularly interesting to a lot of your listeners is that really small and medium-sized churches have just as much opportunity as churches who are large and have larger budgets and all those kind of things, because right now it's very affordable. In fact, a lot of the AI resources are open source, so you don't even have to pay for them if you know how to follow YouTube tutorials and things like that. So
is kind of what I'm thinking about here now as I go to my WordPress blog, as I'm on a Word document. Almost any, not almost any, but a whole lot of the programs that I'm already using now have an AI feature just built into the stuff I'm already using. So it's not like I got to go out and pay money for it. And part of the question that I wanted to ask you was related to this. It seemed like it showed up overnight, like maybe not a year ago, but certainly 18 months, 2 years ago at the most. It was like AI was this sci-fi thing out there at some point in the future. And it felt to me, as an outsider to this, like overnight, all of a sudden it's available to everyone. How did this happen? So is there, can you make sense of that for us in any way? Or are you just as confused by the suddenness as we all are?
Well, I saw degrees of what's happened coming, but I did not see what has happened. I did not see it coming. Believe it or not, AI has been around since the 60s. There was a chatbot that was actually created in the late 60s that was a very rudimentary computer with the ability to reason and chat back and forth. And it wasn't very sophisticated. It wasn't very good. AI has been around for a while. So it's used in fraud detection, and in the commercial world, they use it to predict how consumers spend and all sorts of things. It's been around in the kind of enterprise part of our society for a long time. The major shift that actually happened just about a year ago, back in November. OpenAI put out. OpenAI put out this new program called ChatGPT, which just about everybody's heard of at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the groundbreaking thing that happened was that through these neural networks, they taught the computer to kind of learn like a human brain learns. But the big shift was what is called natural language processing. And what that means is that the computer can now talk to us using what is called natural language, right? So you can talk to the computer the way that you talk to another human being, and the computer has learned how to predict the next words in the sentence. And so it basically now understands how to communicate in the way that humans communicate. So in the past, you would have had to be a programmer or know some kind of C++ language or programming nerdy kind of stuff. And the big shift was that you could sit down and talk to the computer and it would talk back to you, and in a way that you understood. And what's really wild is that in the last 3 months or so, AI has now taken on what is called multimodal artificial intelligence, which means that basically AI can now communicate through image, it can communicate through voice. So now ChatGPT has an app that you can download on your phone, and you can say, "Hey, ChatGPT, write a song for me," or whatever, and it can now listen to your voice and understand it. You can give it an image and say, "Hey, what's happening in this image?" And it can look at it. There's a really great demo when they were putting this software out that showed a guy trying to fix his seat on his bike, and he didn't know how to lower the bike or whatever. And so he took a picture of it, put it in ChatGPT, and it said, "Okay, the lever that's on the bottom is what you need. You need an Allen wrench to fix that," or whatever. So then he's like, "I don't know what an Allen wrench is. Here's my toolbox." Took a picture of the toolbox. It said, "Okay, the Allen wrench that you need is the one over on the left, down by the logo." So it like is looking at pictures and showing how to do all those things. And then I saw a really exciting demo today from Google. They have a technology called Gemini that they're just showcasing. And someone took a legal pad, like a little post-it note pad, and started to draw on it with a marker and said, "Hey, Gemini, what is this?" And so they drew something and started to draw just a squiggly line. And it said, "I see a yellow pad and you've just drawn a squiggly line on it." And then he connects a couple lines and he said, "It appears to be a duck." And then he colors it blue and he's like, "It appears to be a blue duck, although ducks are not typically blue. They are brown or black, though there are, and so he puts a little blue rubber duck on the screen and it recognizes it. And so it's to the place now where AI is intelligent enough to recognize context and to help you problem solve and be creative alongside you and do some of the things that you might not be able to do, all through this multimodal natural language processing, which I think makes it accessible to anyone.
Feels like to me is like a big advance as a starting point, but a big advancement beyond this of when you type something into Google and it gives you suggestions ahead of time, because Google now has had so many searches and has so much information that they know 99% of the people who start with these 3 words are looking for these 6 words. And so it's based on metadata, right? It's based on the fact that they have collected so much data from so many places from around the world in all kinds of different ways that there is now there became a predictability to search. And now there's enough metadata where you can say, can you write me up a summary of Martin Luther's theology in the style of Tim Keller?
Yep.
And because all of that information is out there and in those, on the cloud and in those places, it can take all of that in a microsecond and create something for you that you can then use as a starting base for where to go from there. Am I close to what we're talking about here?
You are very close. And in fact, you're pretty much dead on. It has trained on mountains and mountains and mountains of data. And so it's learned how to predict language. It's learned, it can recognize tone. So like if you want AI to learn to write from your writings, like to write in your voice, you can feed it a bunch of things that you've written, put your books in and that kind of thing. And it will be able to identify kind of patterns and structure and tone and all those kind of things. And so then you can use it to write new things. And so let's say that you want to write a newsletter to your subscriber base or something like that. But you're tight on time or whatever, and you say, "I want to write on this topic I want 6 paragraphs on this. I want to give them a call to action at the end that is this, and so on. And I want you to do it in my voice or whatever. And what I found is that when you do that, it still requires that you edit and do, work on it, but it's amazing at how well it captures kind of your style and the way that you write and those kind of things. It's pretty mind-blowing. One of the things I think we've got to be careful about is putting too much trust and just farming out our ministry to AI. We don't want to do that. My friend Kenny Jang has been quoted as saying, it's not a magic vending machine, or you just put in a prompt and it spits out a great sermon, that there's more involved. A few of my guiding principles, and they're all pretty well related, first and foremost is that AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you kind of medium. And I think some folks have this idea that I'm just going to tell AI, write me a sermon, and I'll give it a scripture, and it's going to do it. It will write you a sermon. It will be a terrible sermon. It'll be very shallow. It won't really bring a lot to the table because you didn't give it enough information. So the second thing that I always like to say is that AI, the way that we engage with AI should be a conversation, not just a query or a command. So if you just give it a single question or you just throw a command at it, it'll do what you've asked it to do. But if you don't bring enough of you to it, it's not going to be very good. And then the third thing that I say, and again, these are all very related, but one of my guiding principles is that AI does not have a soul, and you do. And if you don't bring your soul to the conversation, there is no soul in the conversation. And so again, AI is not going to get it right without a lot of back and forth, and you really bringing your soul. Let's remember that we are co-creators with Christ, and the Holy Spirit resides in us, not in that technology. Now this isn't so much a guiding principle; it's just something I've been saying to a lot of folks. AI is neither inherently good or inherently evil. It's a tool. And that tool can be used for good things, and it can be used for things that aren't good, evil things. And so I think we have to be respectful. The way that the metaphor that I use is it's sort of like an axe. An axe is a great tool for preparing firewood, cutting down trees, and you're going to do it a whole lot quicker than if you have to break it up with a rock or, something like that. But you have to learn how to swing an axe, because if you don't swing it right, you might hit yourself in the face or chop off your toe or, whatever. We've got to have respect and learn how to wield it. And at the same time, some people will take an axe and swing it into someone else and use it as a weapon. And I don't think that means that we should ban axes, but I think we ought to be learning how to properly use those tools. And so I had a lot of fear about this in the very beginning. You may or may not know that I started my career. I went to art school as a graphic artist. I think we've talked about that before. And so I went through this progression in my life as an artist where I can draw fairly photorealistic, and I was into traditional mediums. And then when I went to college, I had to learn how to use Photoshop and Illustrator and these computer programs. And I was so worried that I was going to lose all of my artistic skills. And what I realized was Photoshop and Illustrator and those programs were just another brush for me to paint with. And I could paint differently than I do with those traditional tools. And then AI really scared me, because you don't even have to know all the stuff that I spent 20 something years learning about Photoshop and all that. You could put in words and it will make images. But what I have discovered in the last year is that it is just a more sophisticated paintbrush. And it still requires that I bring a lot of me to it. And I have to know, I had to learn recognize good art from bad art, and good fonts and colors and layout and all that kind of stuff. So AI has not replaced my skills as an artist, but has just enhanced them. And so I think you can apply that to preaching and to hospitality in the church, and all sorts of different things that we do in ministry. We can just use these tools to help us to simplify and even make better some of the things that we might do otherwise.
It feels to me like pretty much every new technology, probably every new technology that has come along, has faced similar fears. So when the telephone first came in, people were saying, well, it's no, either they were saying it's useless and it'll be done in a second, or it's going to replace face-to-face conversation. And then
Yes.
television came in, and it was like, oh, then nobody's ever going to go see live theater again, and they're not going to go see the movies. And okay, none of that happened. And then computers came in, and nobody's ever going to read an actual print book ever again, because we can now do, and some of what they predicted is true, because the abuse is there, and those things did happen with abuse. But then there are also values
Yep.
that we can find, and we have to, with every new piece of technology, we have to find the balance. There will be bad things that happen and are accelerated in their badness because of the new technology, and there will be some great things that happen and can be accelerated in their goodness because of the new technology. And this is just, it's the newest one. It's unfamiliar to enough to us now to have some fear, and some of the fear is valid because we need to be careful with it. But I think we got to,
Yeah.
like you said, we've got to be able to speak to it intelligently, and I think use it wisely as well. So speaking of using it wisely, what I want to do in this one
Yes.
is, let's get to the thing I've really been looking forward to with this interview. I want you to teach me, as someone completely unfamiliar with. I've never done AI. I've never touched AI. I've never asked AI a single question. I've never tried to create anything with it. So you're going to give us a screen, and we're going to watch it. So if you are listening to the audio podcast, I'm going to try to describe it. Well, Jason and I will both try to describe exactly what he's doing so that you can understand what's happening. But there are probably going to be a few times where you're not going to be clear on it. So I encourage you, go to the YouTube channel, watch this happen on video in front of you. The link to that will be in the show notes, because this is our first podcast that kind of requires visuals. Requires visuals to get everything, even though we're going to try to make it as understandable as we can for those of you who are just listening on audio. So if I want to use AI, you've got it up in front of you now. You've got the Chat GPT. I recognize that logo up on the screen. So
Yes.
walk us through it. If I want to use AI for the first time, Jason, tell us what to do.
Yeah. Well, first, Google, or you can go to chat.openai.com to sign up for an account. ChatGPT 3.5, which is the earlier model, is free. So you can try this without having to pay anything at all. It's a really good model. I subscribed to the pro version, which, from what I understand, a few weeks ago when they put out the new version, which is multimodal and can create images, I'll show you that in just a moment. I think they've paused signups for pro accounts right now, just because they don't want to diminish the system and have too many people on it. But you can also try out Google's Bard or Claude, CLAUDE.ai. There are several chat bots, and I'll get those to you to put in the show notes. But ChatGPT is kind of the most popular one right now. I'm also a big fan of another one called Magi, Magai, who is actually created by a person of faith, a former youth pastor, Dustin Stout. And what's really cool about that particular one is that it integrates 3 or 4 chat bots into it, including ChatGPT, and it's got ability to create images and some other things as well. But I thought we would look at ChatGPT today because it's the one that gets all the press and that everybody talks about and that kind of thing. The other great thing about using ChatGPT is that there is tons and tons of training out there, free walkthroughs and tutorials and stuff like that on YouTube. And so even if you've never touched it before, you will have some guidance out there. The first thing that I just want to mention to you here is that with ChatGPT, you talk to it like you talk to a person. So you don't have to use a lot of fancy language. In fact, sometimes I think if you become too fancy, it doesn't understand you as well as it does if you just talk to
And
it
my
like you're
guess is
talking
it
to
starts
another.
anticipating that, and then you've got to keep that up, doesn't it?
Probably so.
Yeah.
Probably. The tendency is to want to just jump in and like ask a question or whatever. But there are a few things that I always try to, again, just help people kind of think about when you're using a program like this. The first thing is like, what is the task that you would like for ChatGPT to perform? That is write text or create an image or help me code or whatever. And I think it's really important to keep in mind, and I'm not going to preamble too much here, but I just want to caution us against just jumping in and not really understanding how to best work with the technology. It's important, I think, to understand that if you help Chat GPT understand the role you want it to play, it'll give you much better output. So if I said, I want you to be a subject matter expert, so you are a theologian, help me think about a sermon. The way that I like to describe it is that like there's this huge barrel of information. And by telling it you want it to be a theological expert, you kind of narrow the funnel a little bit. And then if you say, but I want to take on a Wesleyan perspective, then the funnel gets even more narrow. But I want this to be a sermon for people who don't regularly go to church, and then the funnel becomes more narrow. The more information you give it, the better the content you're going to have and help to shape that content. So I thought one of the regular exercises I do when I'm showing people how to do this is to design a sermon series together. So I thought we might start that way. First of all, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, can you take on the role of brainstorming partner for a sermon series? And
Any
the thing
search
is,
bar or task
was,
bar, so you're just typing it into the message bar, just like you would on any kind of search bar or task bar. You just put that question in,
yep,
okay, in just normal language. Gotcha.
absolutely. Yep. And so I'm going to hit return here, and it's going to come back and tell me, absolutely, I would be happy to brainstorm a sermon series. To get started, could you please give me some more details about the themes, audience, specific topics you're interested in exploring? This will help me tailor my suggestions to better suit your needs. So
Prompts you as to how to use it better.
it does. And usually what I'll say, if it doesn't say that to me, I'll actually ask it. In fact, let's do that. What specifically do you need from me to be successful? And usually it'll give me a list of like 3 or 4 things. Yeah, here we go. So it's saying to effectively brainstorm ideas for your sermon series, it'd be helpful for me to know the following. What is your target audience? Who's your, what is the theme or focus? The length of the series? What are the key messages or goals? Previous series or topics, or any other constraints or considerations. And then for each of those, it's got a little.
Yeah. So it's giving us a bullet pointed list with, with the main thought of each bullet point in bold, so that you can follow through step by step how to do the task that you're asking it to do.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, I regularly will ask it, do you understand? And if it doesn't understand, it'll tell me I would better be able to help you if, and then it will give me whatever I need to know. So since when we're recording this, we are in the first week of Advent. So I thought maybe we could just generate an Advent series. So the first thing is it's asking is target audience. I think about the fact that I think even in our smaller churches, this time of year, people like kind of the Christmas nostalgia, and it seems like church is kind of part of that. So I think this is one of our best opportunities of the year to reach people who don't maybe come to church very often. So I'm going to say target audience is people who don't regularly attend church. Second thing
for the visual,
is,
for those who are listening then. So above it, the answer included numbered bullet points, and the numbered bullet point number 1 was target audience. So you put in your bar 1, people who don't regularly attend church, and it knows then that that's your answer to its first prompt.
yes.
And then you put in number 2 and it knows, okay, gotcha.
Yep. And I'm putting in, so it asks what my theme or focus is. The way that it describes this, do you have a specific theme or focus in mind, a particular book of the Bible or theological concept, a season like Advent or Lent, interesting, or a current issue relevant to your community? So I'm going to say Advent The third thing it's asking, and you don't have to do all of these. I found that, sometimes I don't have an answer, but Advent is 4 weeks. So we'll say that's the next thing it's asking me
The more
for.
you put in, the more it can help you. So, yeah.
Yep. Be a 4-week series. Fourth thing that it's asking me for is key messages or goals. Any specific message or goal that you want to communicate through the series. We'll say anticipation for the birth, anticipation for celebrating the arrival of Jesus. And then number 5, previous series or topics. We'll skip that one. Any other constraints?
That's a fascinating one. So it actually suggests if you want to tell us what else you've already said about the subject so you don't repeat yourself. Wow, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. And since we're doing this as a one-off, we can't do that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But the thing is it may not give you all of these specific questions. Like it's almost like having a conversation with your kid multiple days in a row. If you ask the same question every day, they're not going to give you the same answer. They may give you similar answers, but it's going to be a little different each time. So I'm going to go ahead. I put in for the people who don't regularly attend churches, our target audience this season is Advent. It's a 4-week series, anticipation of celebrating the arrival of Jesus. Number 6, I am going to put in just for I know some of the churches that are kind of in my tribe will use the Revised Common Lectionary this time of year. So I'm just going to give it that as a constraint. Just so people who do follow some sort of a liturgical calendar might see how this could work. So I'm going to say use the gospel text from the Revised Common Lectionary. And again, you could skip that if you want. I'm going to hit return, and it's going to think. So, all right, it's giving us our answer. It says, thank you for providing these details. Given your focus on reaching people who don't regularly attend church with an Advent theme for over a 4-week period, while incorporating the gospel text from the Revised Common Lectionary, here is a brainstorm for your sermon series. So it says week 1, the journey begins, hope in the waiting. The focus of this first week is highlighting the theme of hope that Advent brings, especially in times of uncertainty. The gospel text, the first week's gospel reading from the Revised Common Lectionary as a basis. It's interesting that it didn't put it
what
in
I'm
there.
sensing from, because this is the first time I've seen these results. So let me give you my first impression. It feels like I've got a very fast assistant to now help me with my sermon prep. Whereas before I had to go and find all this for myself, I can now ask someone who's got access to most of the world's knowledge.
Yes.
And ask, can you give me just some starter ideas for here so that, I'm stuck. I've been, me specifically, Karl Vaters, I've been preaching on Christmas for 40 years. I love the season, but there have been many years where I got no problem retelling the story just as it is, but I also want to make it fresh for people. So, hey, what haven't I talked about? Feed all my stuff in there. Tell me what I haven't talked about yet for this particular audience, for this particular event, based on these particular parameters. And this assistant goes into the library and comes back in 3.5 seconds with a bunch of suggestions that I can then use as I go forward.
You pretty much got it. And the thing is, what I always tell people is you don't have to use any of it. I won't do this for now, but I could say, I don't like any of that. Let's take a completely different take, and it'll do it. And it'll do it endlessly. It'll do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who can't see the screen, first week is it gives us the suggestion of the journey begins, hope and waiting. The second is preparing the way, peace and turbulence. Week 3, joy in the midst of reality. Week 4, love comes down, the heart of Advent. So it didn't actually give the gospel text. So Oh, and then, by the way, it has here some additional suggestions. Additional considerations: language and approach. Use language that is accessible to those not familiar with religious terminology. Music and art. Incorporate contemporary music that resonates with a broader audience. Community involvement. Involve the community in your services, perhaps through testimonies or sharing experiences that relate to the weekly themes, and then follow-up resources.
Feels kind of like crowdsourcing it as well. What are some ideas? What are some ways we could possibly approach this? Okay, I've got a side note question, just a quirky little one. If I ask
Yes.
it to alliterate those points, will it alliterate for me?
Oh, I'm sure it would. Let's try it. Can you? How do you spell alliterate?
Alliterate.
A
Alliter.
L A
Yeah. Allit.
L.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right,
There we go.
sorry. I always tell people I'm a graphic artist. I can't spell, but it's going to look good when it's done. But it may not be spelled right. Those titles.
Just to tell on you, I saw something last Thanksgiving where your initial artwork came out for grateful and you missed the E and it was grateful. You corrected it in the later
Yes.
ones, but I saw, oh, look at what Jason's grateful for. So yeah,
Yes,
we're all
yes.
subject to that occasionally. Well, there you go. It did. It alliterated. Okay, that was just a fun experiment for me. Hope in the hush,
Yes.
anticipating the advent, path to peace, preparing amidst pandemonium. Joyous journeys, juxtaposing jubilation and the mundane. Wow. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Now we're
So
having fun. Okay.
yes, absolutely. And by the way, the graphic that you're talking about, I used ChatGPT as an image generator in it, and it does a really good job, but it can't spell anything yet. So I went and fixed it after that. I'm going to show you that. If we have
Gotcha.
enough time, I'll
Yeah.
show you that too.
Yeah.
So let me show you. So in our first round here, it just tells me gospel text, application, interactive element, and things like that. So I'm going to say, can you list the gospel text and provide a synopsis of each of the text.
You're typing it in. Is that better than text to speak to text?
I mean, it basically, speech to text would just allow you to it would type it for you, but I don't believe that the desktop version has that yet, or it may. I'm not 100% sure on that, but the phone does have that.
Gotcha.
Oh, great. It says there's an error generating response, which is interesting. So it says doing research with Bing, revised common
Searching the
lectionary Advent
lectionary, yeah.
2023. Yep. So it's searching.
So it's visiting all of the
library.medina.
relevant websites for what you've asked it.
Yep.
So this was taking a little
Yeah.
longer than the others. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Searching Mark 13. Okay. It's thinking about it. And this does happen sometimes with the app. Every once in a while it doesn't catch up.
Well, and my
enough.
guess is that common searches, like searches that are common in popular culture, get used a lot and will be faster. If you're going to go to something that's a little more obscure, then maybe it's going to take a little bit longer because it hasn't been doing it as regularly.
That could be, but the honest goodness truth is I've done this before and it's not actually gone out of ChatGPT to look for it. So ChatGPT trained on a lot of data all the way up through, I can't remember what the day, it was like April of 21. And it didn't, oh, here we go. It's giving the summary. And until recently, it didn't actually search.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just for those who are listening. So now what it's doing as we're talking, because it is taking a while to come up, for each of the weeks, it's now giving a primary text and a synopsis of it and what to do with it. So go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
I was just going to say that prior to a few weeks ago, it didn't actually search the web. So it only could give you data that it had trained on all the way up through April of 2021. And then they did another update that was like through February of 23 or something like that. And then they added the ability for it to go out and search the web. So
live searching the web until real recently.
Yes. So that's only been available maybe for a month or so. All
Okay.
right. So what it's given us here is the lectionary text for each week. What's helpful in this, for me anyway, if I'm planning worship, is rather than having to go out and search all the websites and find all the texts and then read each text and sort of figure out what each text has to say, this is giving it. I asked it to give me a synopsis. So it says, Mark, I'll just read the first couple sentences of this. Mark 13, 24 through 37 is the first week in the lectionary. This passage is part of the, quote, a little apocalypse, where Jesus speaks about the end times and the coming of the Son of Man. It focuses on the importance of being vigilant and being prepared for God's coming, emphasizing wakefulness in the face of uncertain times. So it goes on from there. But anyway, now we've got all four of those, which is, I think, helpful as I'm planning worship.
So
Okay,
far,
so
so far, this doesn't feel like it's writing anything for you, but that it's giving you research results. Is that because of
right
this is how
now,
we're asking it?
probably so,
Okay.
but we'll go a little further with it.
All right.
So like, one of the things, so here's another thing that's, again, just very helpful. If you're in a Baptist church, there's a certain theological perspective. If you're Wesleyan or you're Catholic or whatever, you want things to kind of have that feel. So I'm going to say, can you write? And again, I don't know that I would use this as is, but if you're just using it to get started, I'm going to say, can you write a traditional call to, oh, got my L there. Call, I'm still spelling wrong. Tradi, sorry. Tradi, Trad. I don't usually talk and type at the same time. So
No, I hear you. Yeah,
right. Can you write a
you're
traditional call to worship in the Wesleyan tradition for each week?
so now we're going beyond research and we're asking it to actually write something for us.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will tell you that what I have done in the past, and maybe I can even pull this up if we have a little time at the end, is that I have shown it what a call to worship is, brought in some that I have written before in the past, trained it on what that is, so giving it all the context, and then had it write drafts. And then again, I perfect those drafts. Let me see here.
Now is
Certainly,
partially based on what you've already fed into it that works for you.
yes, exactly.
So,
And
so now it becomes like a study assistant who knows your voice.
exactly.
Okay.
And one of the things is I've spent most of my ministry in non-traditional churches. So I usually write more of a spoken word introduction than what might typically be called a call to worship, where there are like people and leader, like a responsive prayer where a leader leads and people say a part and the leader. And after I wrote all the calls to worship, I said, hey, can you write this? Can you rewrite these in a traditional format with leader and people? And then I said, here's an example of what that looks like. And it took all the stuff that I had already done and rewrote it in that way, which was helpful and impressive. All right, so this is what it put together for week one's prayer. Beloved in Christ, as we enter the holy season of Advent, let us gather with hearts expectant and watchful, awaiting the Lord's coming. With hope in our hearts, let us worship the God who comes to us in times of waiting and uncertainty. Let the light of hope shine in our hearts as we prepare for the arrival of our Savior. So that might be a call to worship that you would share. Let me just say, well, I don't know if I need to give it an example, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to say, can you rewrite these as interactive prayers with leader and people responses. So in other words, the leader says,
Listening, I know it's a little boring, but we've got stuff. We're watching it happen, so it's got a little more
yeah,
pop to it for us. It's just
yes,
the
sorry
nature of
about
the
that.
video thing. No, it's the nature of what we're trying to do today. We're doing something different. So, and part of what's happening is you're asking questions and you're anticipating things that there's a skill set in using this, because I wouldn't have thought like to ask a question like that. I wouldn't have known that a question like that can be asked. So I guess as you
Yeah,
use it more, you start getting used to, hey, here's a place I can go with this that I didn't even think I could go with it, because you start getting used to the conversation, I guess, for lack of a better term.
yes. And so
Okay. And yeah,
I probably should have asked here. Um, yeah, it's doing it. Okay. I probably should have said, do you understand, or what else do you need to know? And it would have come back and told me. But here we go. I'm not going to go through. It's still generating the response. But here's week one.
4 weeks
Leader.
with leader says this, the people say this, the leader says this, the people say this. Yeah. And then all together
Yep.
at the end.
And so the leader line is in bold,
Right.
and the people is in
Yep.
bold. So it even breaks it up so that you
Oh
understand.
yeah.
So it's just that call.
Yeah, even typographically, it stands out in a very understandable way.
Yes, absolutely. So, now we have these calls to worship. And again, if I were doing this for real, I would be going over it with a fine tooth comb and all of those kinds of things. Then what I'm doing this in a bit of a weird order because of the conversation, the way we're asking
Sure.
the questions, but um, I might go back and say, I'd like to let's see. One of the ways that I like to plan worship when I'm teaching the process is for people to think about what is the metaphor. So what is the kind of modern day parable that people might experience, like the creative element, and then what is the desired outcome for each week. And then I also like to ask, what is the felt need. Um, One of the things that's really cool about ChatGPT is that you can train it on all of these terms and the way that you do things. They've got what are called custom GPTs, and there's also custom instructions. I haven't set that up yet in my account, but I can basically teach it all of these things so that it knows what I mean, what I say felt need, when I say metaphor, and all of that kind of thing. The other thing to know is that all of the conversations that you have, so over on the left of the screen, which our viewers can see, but our listeners can't,
Left.
is
Yeah.
all of my conversations with ChatGPT.
Oh, so you can
So
go back through the
anytime,
whole history.
yep, and anytime I go back to that, it will pick back up on the conversation. So it knows everything we said before, and if I click on it, it will catch right back up to where we were at and respond. So if I were planning this series, let's say I started on this in October, and I got busy with some other things, and then in November I got to come back to it, and I'm cramming because Advent is coming. I can go right back into this conversation. It picks right up and understands the context. It just picks up from where it went. So I'm going to say,
Yeah.
can you give me a specific creative metaphor for each week? And then, well, let's just start with that. I'll do that real quick. We'll see what it comes up with. So it's
Oh,
using your
yeah.
alliterated ones, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so the first week, hope in the hush, anticipating the Advent. Um, a lone candle flickering in the night casts a warm glow amidst encroaching darkness, as it stands as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the smallest light can hold back the darkness, which is directly from the text, if you're familiar with that text, symbolizing the anticipation of the coming light of the world. Second week, the metaphor that comes up with is a river calmly flowing through a turbulent landscape, unwavering in its course toward the sea and so on. The third week is a burst of colorful flowers in a monochromatic world. So what I want to show you next is pretty mind-blowing. And so, well, let me do one more thing before I show you this, and that is if we want to
Oh, sure.
incorporate
Promise
all
to
four.
blow my mind and then back off of it. Come on.
I'm still going to blow your mind,
Okay.
but
Okay.
we've got these 4 weeks. So I'm going to ask it, what are 10 potential titles for this series, keeping in mind it's Advent, and for people who don't regularly attend church.
Eight of those.
In other
Okay.
words, don't be overly churchy. So it's going to generate some titles. Here we go. Winter's Whisper, An Advent Journey. Stars in the Night, Finding Light in Advent. The Coming Glow, 4 weeks of anticipation. Awaiting Dawn, Stories of Hope and Renewal. Before the Manger, an Advent countdown. Season of Promise, Discovering Ancient Hopes. Pathways to Peace, and so on. So it's got a bunch of titles. Here's one that I kind of like because of the title, The Silent Nights, Reflecting on Advent. Only because Silent Night is one of those titles that anybody might recognize because that's a popular song on the radio and all of that. All right, so let me show you the part that I wanted to kind of blow your mind on. I'm going to grab this first description of the metaphor for week 1. A lone candle flickering in the night, casting a warm glow amidst an approaching darkness. I'm just going to grab that part. And then I'm going to say to ChatGPT. So within ChatGPT, there is an image generator called DALL-E 3. And by the way, if you pay the $20 a month for this, everything we're generating, we have rights to. So you could publish all of this. You could write a book. You could put it on your website. The images that it generates, you can use with no copyright concerns or anything like that because it's making them for you. I'm going to ask it to make an image. Can you make an image based on this description?
You copied from earlier.
Yep. So it's a lone
Alrighty.
flickering candle at night, casting warm glow amidst the encroaching darkness. So I'm going to hit the return button, and it's going to think about it, and it's going to start to create the image. And again, you have
this image. So this is not like taking somebody else's artwork and some other image. It is for the first time ever creating an image that hasn't existed before based on that.
It sure is. This is a brand new image, completely generated by AI. But what we're seeing on the screen, which I think is kind of cool,
it looks pretty
is
cool,
the image of a candle, and it sort of looks like it's on the. It's almost looks like it's in a forest, or could be the floor of the nativity scene, like
the nativity scene.
you know,
Yeah, right beneath the manger kind of a thing.
So
yeah.
there's
a little bit of smoke in the
darkness,
background, and
yeah, so it looks like nighttime. And then here's the really cool thing is I can say, great, give me a widescreen version of this. Now, it won't take this same image and make it widescreen, but it'll create something that hopefully would be very similar to this.
An option. So if I wanted to take the text that was applied to that, could I just ask, can you add this text to the image, and it'll just drop the text in the middle of the image then?
That's one of the limitations of AI right now, is that it doesn't do text very well. It only gets text right. I'll show you. So here's the widescreen, which would more or less match your screen.
Same image, but of the same feel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar feel. But let me go back up here and show you how it does text. It doesn't always, like I said, it doesn't do it well. So I'm going to say, can you add this text or this title to the same image description? And then I'm going to just type in the alliterated tile there, hope in the hush, anticipating, this really should just say Advent, Advent, and then we'll hit the button. Now, again, until the most recent version of ChatGPT came out, you couldn't get any text out of it. It would just put all kinds of extra letters in. It would be a mess. It probably will be, it won't spell it right. It'll have some issues. So
No,
you're
it's not
better
like
off.
most of us don't know how to add text to an image, though. So
Yes. Most
yeah,
of the
it's
time
easy
you're
part.
better off just describing what you want. And yeah, so here we go. It's actually not spelled well. Yeah. So weird space here between the O and the P and the U and the S on hush.
It also kind of is a suggestion for those of us who aren't graphically minded as to a way you might put the text in.
Yes, absolutely. So, my suggestion to you is generate it without the text, maybe generate one with text to give you some ideas, like you said, and then put it into Canva or PowerPoint or Photoshop or whatever you use, and that will help you do all of that. I'm going to show you one other thing here from another series that I developed, just so you can kind of see all of the pieces together. I don't know how long we want to go, so I don't want to.
A couple more minutes.
But I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you this. This is a series that I developed using the same process, and then I'm going to show you the media that I created with it, because I'm going to show you a bumper video, and everything you're going to see is AI. So this is the same process. I said, can you take on the role of brainstorming partner? It gave me 4 things. What is the general theme or topic? Who's the target audience? How many sermons will be in the series? What is the specific religious text, or what do you want to focus on? And what are your goals? So I gave it 3. I said, I want to do a series on the life of Jesus, starting with his birth, ending with his death and resurrection. I want to focus on his miracles in that series.
Before you go ahead, just because it's new to me, scroll back up again to the top of that. So the question you asked in this is a previous work that you did that you're showing us. And in this one, you started it by asking specifically, can you play the role of a brainstorming partner for a sermon series design? So you're asking it how to behave. So if you want, brainstorming partner is a great way to do it. That way, okay.
Yes, and there are lots of
again, this is even a way of asking the question that I would have not considered until I saw it written by you here.
Yeah. One of my favorite questions to ask it, and this is, I think, great for all sorts of pastors, is to ask it to sort of be the foil to whatever you're talking about. So let's say you're preaching on giving. Can you take on the opposite point of view, someone who is skeptical of the church? And it will give you great arguments or poke holes in what it is that you are writing and help you build better arguments to clarify, like if you're talking about, spiritual gifts or something like that. I want you to take on the role of somebody who doesn't believe we have spiritual gifts or thinks they don't have one or whatever. And it helps you, you can paste in your whole sermon and it'll help you find the areas where maybe you need to sharpen things up a little bit. So I like it for that. It can be an editor. Like I had an event I was speaking at in Michigan earlier this year, and I gave them my 500-word bio, and they said, we can't fit all this. Can you give us a 100-word bio? And for me, that's super stressful. How do I take 500 words and make it 100? And I just put it in a ChatGPT and said, can you give me a 100-word version of this bio? And somehow it included just enough stuff to make it still feel like it was the whole thing. So it's great for a lot of different things.
Great. So I interrupted you to go back to where you were going because I interrupted that. Yep.
No problem. So I gave it the parameters. This is going to be a series about Jesus, starting with his birth, going all the way through his death and resurrection. I want it to focus on his miracles. The target audience is people looking for the miracle in their lives, and it'll be a 6-week series. So it went through the same process. It gave me 6 weeks, starting with the birth of the miracle of transformation of water into wine, the miracle of provision, feeding the 5,000, the miracle of healing the blind and the lame, the miracle of mastery over nature when Jesus calms the storm, and then miracle of resurrection, triumph over death. And so then I said, can you give me some specific takeaways and applications for each week in the series? So I'll just read the first one. Birth of the miracle. Miracles, takeaway. Miracles often begin with humble beginnings, humble and unexpected beginnings. Application, encourage attendees to look for the miracles in their own beginnings, whether it's the start of a new job, relationship, personal journey. Ask them to embrace the new starts with optimism, seeking them as opportunities. Again, it's not writing the sermon for you, but it's giving you some things to think about as you're crafting your stuff. Then in the same way, I asked it to give me 10 titles. So it gave me 10 titles. I didn't like any of them. So I said, could you provide 10 more titles? And the first one hit me because of nostalgia. It said, Beyond Belief, the Miraculous Life of Jesus. And there was a great Petra album when I was a high schooler.
If you're thinking
Beyond
nostalgia with that, you had to be a Petra fan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cheesy, but I loved it. So I'm like, okay, great. That's the one. So then I said to ChatGPT, can you help me write a 30-second movie trailer for this series? The script should be cinematic in tone. The video will incorporate a series of still images inspired by the miracles laid out in the series. As we see those scenes, we'll hear the voice of a narrator. Provide me with a description of each of the scenes or in each of the images and the accompanying voiceover. Remember to make it feel dramatic like a movie trailer. In the script with the title, Beyond Belief, the Miraculous Story of Jesus. And so it says, absolutely, I understand your requirement. I said, do you understand? Here's a dramatic cinematic script, and it spit it out, as quick as you've seen it do everything. And so here's just the first few lines. Image number 1 is a humble starlit stable in Bethlehem. Voiceover, in a world where hope was born in the humblest of places. Image number 2, a transformation of water pouring into a cup and coming out as wine. A man emerged, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. And so it writes this great, movie script kind of thing for me. And I'm going to tell you what I did with that in just 1 second. I did ask it if it were a movie trailer, what would the tagline be? And it gave me a bunch of taglines. And then I asked it to list all the scriptures using the Common English translation, and it went and found them without having to search the web and gave me synopsis of each one. And then I even used it to pick out music. And so I asked it, or actually I wanted some movie clips to go along with it. So can you give me some Hollywood film clips that would go with each week in the series? And so it gave me a bunch of Christian movies. And I'm like, no, can you give me just some secular movies? So The Lion King, Cinderella, Hook, and it tells me what the scene is and why it fits. So it gives me a little description of each of those things. If you're trying to illustrate your sermon well, it'll do all that. So let me show you what I did with that movie trailer. In the same way that I generated some images here, I used a different AI app called Midjourney, but today I probably would do it right here in ChatGPT. But I'm going to escape here out of the I'm going to go back to my main screen here for just a second. So what I did was I generated each of the images, and you may remember that it gave me descriptions of each scene. And so the first scene that it gave me, I'm afraid to click on this. Let's see, is this the right thing? Okay, yeah. So this is the image that generated of a humble starlet stable at nighttime. And so I was able to illustrate that without, I have graphic design skills, but you don't have to have any. So I did that for each image in the scene, and it took a little while, and I had to generate lots of images to get the right ones. But I took that narration that it had written, and I used another program that's an AI app called 11 Labs, and it can do voiceover that is completely convincing. So what I'm going to show you here is a bumper video that I put together using images. The script is completely written by ChatGPT. The images were all generated in AI. I did stitch them together in a video editor, but I used music from an AI music generator called SoundRaw. And then the only thing I really did to this was I added the text at the end because it doesn't add text well. And this is what I generated from that session that you just saw.
In a world where hope was born in the humblest of places, a man emerged, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. With a mere touch, scarcity became abundance. The impossible became possible. In the face of turmoil, he commanded peace. And in the shadow of death, he brought life. Beyond belief, the miraculous story of Jesus. Witness the miracles.
So almost completely generated by AI. The script, the voiceover, the music, the images. I mean, I had to kind of stitch it together and add the text, but part of why I really get excited about these tools is I know a lot of churches who couldn't dream of creating something like that without somebody on staff or to spend a lot of money to do it. ChatGPT, the pro version that generates images, is only $20 a month. And you can do you can't generate the voiceover in that, but you can generate everything else that was in there in that way. So I've been leading training since June of this year, and several that I've done in person. And I'll tell you, some of the pastors that have walked away from it that are like, you don't get it. I have a 2-point charge. I'm a tiny little country church. And I'm so excited by what I've learned at this, and they've gotten in touch with me afterwards to tell me, like, I was able to write my announcements with ChatGPT, and I was able to create this image with ChatGPT, and all of these things. To me, it's just such an exciting time to be the church, because the gospel message is incredible, but the way we present it really matters. And AI can give you the ability to do things you might not otherwise be able to accomplish. And it doesn't cost very much, which is a pretty cool thing.
Or even to begin with, for those of us who are still, new to it and trying to figure it out, imagine if you could just take some of your busy work, like,
yes,
hey, take this 500-word thing and narrow it down to 100. That's not creative work. That's busy editing work that I can now do with a simple question. So so if you're worried about it replacing your creativity, well, then don't use it to replace your creativity. Use it to give you time to create by taking care of some of the admin and editing and busy work that you are normally spending way too much time on. And if we start there and we get used to the tools, then as we get used to the tools and we use the tools better, they can be a greater benefit to us.
Yeah. And we don't have time for me to show other examples, but like one of the examples that I show in my training is taking a sermon, and you can put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you summarize this and give me a little 3-minute podcast script? And I want you to add 3 reflection questions. And then you could send that out as an email to your congregation every week, or you can use that same software, that voice that you heard in the last trailer. That was an all completely AI voice. Well, you can also clone your own voice, and you basically give it a couple of little clips that are under a minute or so. It can clone your voice and then read in your voice that summary of your sermon. So if you wanted to have like a weekly podcast that is 3 minutes, like a 3-minute devotional from last week's sermon that would give people things to reflect on and additional scripture, you could generate that in ChatGPT, feed it into 11 Labs to get the audio, and then put it out into the world, and you don't have to even have all the technical skills and a great microphone and all those kind of things. I really think it can help us in a lot of different ways with discipleship, and you're not farming your discipleship out to ChatGPT, but it can help you to cut down on some of the monotonous things of, like, how do you take your 4-page sermon or 5-page sermon or whatever and make it a 200 word or 200
sensational stuff. I can see
2-minute script.
Yeah, I can see off the hand, for instance, if you're going to be, like, for years I worked with Teen Challenge, drug rehab centers, and I would take a message from Sunday that I'd preached to mostly church people, and there's content in here that will be helpful to them, but I would have to myself adapt the language and the arrangement of it for a very different audience, from a
Yes.
Sunday morning room full of mostly Christians to a small, it's actually in a garage, sitting in a circle with 20 recovering addicts. So the content was there, but the style of it was going to be different. So now, instead of taking an hour to 2 hours to adapt it to the next audience, I can say, what, can you help me understand how to present this to people who are in this particular situation? And I don't just do what it spits out to me, but it can maybe reduce my prep time for that by, as I can see immediately, by at least 80% of my prep time is now gone, because now I just have to edit what it gave to me, because it actually, and it may even know things about people in recovery that I wouldn't have even thought about on my own, because it's gathering from so many different places. So many applications to this that we could go
totally
to, but
getting it. Yep.
yeah, no, I
Well,
appreciate this. Go ahead.
I was just going to, one other quick thing I'll just say is, like, if you're trying to get in the heads of your visitors, a church guest
Yeah.
that's coming in for the first time, and you want to write a letter thanking them for their, visit to your church or whatever, ChatGPT will help you take on that. I mean, tell it what you want it to be, give it a persona, and then tell it what you want to accomplish, and it'll help you do it. So,
Actually, you can
yeah,
write it
it's
up. Here's what I'm thinking. You could write it up and you can say, okay, write this up as a thank you letter to people in their 20s and 30s, another one to people in their 40s and 50s, another one to people in their
Yep.
60s and 70s, so that you're going to use different
Yep.
language for the different age group, and then again, tweak it, edit it so that it has your voice to it, but it gives you, I'm seeing so many different possibilities that I didn't even know were in there now. Jason, thank you for all of this. So much helpfulness. It feels like we've covered so much, and yet it feels like we've barely scratched the surface, obviously, of what's there. So the only way for us to get anywhere beneath it is start with these ideas that Jason has presented, get in there, get your hands on this thing here, start using it for some mundane things that you can now get taken care of more quickly. And then as you move forward, you can get a little more comfort level with using it in ways that are going to be comfortable for you and for the kind of ministry that you're doing. But I appreciate so much. It gives me a real starting place, and I hope it has for a lot of our listeners and watchers as well. But I cannot let you go, even though you've already done it once. The lightning round questions. You may have some of the same answers that you had before, but I am contractually obligated to ask you again. I wrote up the contract myself, and it doesn't exist, but nevertheless, it feels better to say it that way. Here we go. What are the biggest changes you've seen in your field of ministry in the last few years, and how have you adapted to it?
Well, I mean, this AI has really changed the
Yeah.
game in so many ways, so I think the biggest thing is to not bury our heads in the sand and have to catch up 5 years from now, when it's going to be so integrated you won't have a choice. I'd rather ride the front of that wave. So let's just keep on the forefront.
Conversation has been about exactly the answer to that question. So, and the second question, pretty much we've been talking about the whole time too. What free resource, like an app or website, has helped you lately that you'd recommend for small church ministry? I'm going to guess that it might be ChatGPT and a couple of the others that you mentioned.
Yeah, I would say ChatGPT, or we didn't get into it today, but Magi, Magai, might even be a better choice than ChatGPT, because it's got several different image generators and several different chat bots all put in. There's a very inexpensive plan, and there's kind of a medium tier plan that's on par with what you'd spend at ChatGPT, but I would highly recommend that one as well.
As well. What's the best piece of ministry advice you've ever received?
Work yourself out of a job. I was always taught that your success is on how well you replicate yourself. Teach other people what you know, so they're not dependent on you, but they can do the same things. And from an ego standpoint, that's hard to do, but I've spent my ministry trying to teach people all the stuff I know. I would be a terrible magician, because I want to teach you how I do all the tricks.
absolutely essential, especially in ministry. What's the funniest or weirdest thing you've ever seen in church?
Oh man, uh, golly, that's a tough one. Um, I had I don't know if this is the weirdest or funniest, but I was doing a secret worshiper consultation, and I had a lady tell me when I walked in the door that I have a strange looking face. And I was like, I do? And she's like, well, I just mean like you're a stranger. Like I don't recognize you. And I'm like, I like the sound of that better than you have a strange face. So I don't know. I was there
Wow.
to actually um,
Yeah.
to help with their hospitality. So I'm like, let's talk about square one. You know, that one hit me.
Yeah,
You have a
that
strange
one will
face.
do it. Hey, if people want to follow up with this, get more information from you, how can they find you online?
Uh, Probably the best way. I'm always on Facebook, so facebook.com/Midnight Oil Productions, or mail at midnightoilproductions.com. One other thing, just to let you know, I am doing AI cohorts. So I have right now two cohorts, each with 10 churches in each cohort. And it's a 6 month process. We get together once a month. I teach them a whole lot of stuff. We have little assignments. I've got a whole slew of discounts for different things that they get. They get a one-on-one session with me and all of that. And I will get you the link. I don't have it in my head, but I'll get the link for your show notes if people are interested in learning more about how to be a part of that. I'd be happy to have you, but I'm starting the next one in January, which may be after this airs, but I hope to keep doing well
Started by
throughout
the
the year.
time this is coming out, but we'll give you the links. You can get a hold of him for whenever that next one is coming out. Again, Jason, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You have the expertise and you have the courage to jump into places that are kind of scary at first, and then take some of the scare out of it for us and give us tools. And I especially for this, the on ramp for small church pastors, especially for these tools that uh, a very short time ago were extremely expensive and not that long ago were unheard of. And now there's really access to anybody who's got a computer. And now it's just a matter of stepping in and figuring out how to use it. And you've given us a big leg up on getting towards that goal. So I appreciate it. Thank you again, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good to chat with you again.
All right. To be honest with you, I am still not sure how I feel about AI. After the conversation with Jason, it's not quite as mysterious as it was before. It's not quite as scary as it was before. I now see some of the possibilities that I didn't know were there, but I have not yet overcome my fear of the possibilities for abuse as shortcut for lazy people. And for faking us out on things that seem like they're coming from actual individuals, but are coming from a computer instead. So that is still a real significant concern for me. I am most excited about the research assistant part, the idea that you can bounce ideas off and even ask them, is there something that I'm missing, or how would a particular audience feel about it? That I'm excited about. That I think can really be helpful. And it doesn't feel like it's going to be pretending to create something that isn't actually created by a human being. The rest of it, I still don't know yet. So here's my plan. I'm going to play with it, like I said I would in the interview. And I'm going to play with it at the beginning to tackle some of the busy work, the admin work, the editing work, the stuff that enhances the creative work that I'm doing and doesn't replace the creative work that I'm doing. And as I start using it and as I get to understand it better, and as I learn lessons by using it, I'm going to report back on what I find to you. We'll put that either in a future podcast or in an article or in both. But my guess is this is not the last time that we're going to be talking about AI together because, well, like Jason said, AI is here to stay. So it seems to me that it's not a matter of whether it's going to be used, it will be used. So it's really a matter of who's going to use it and how wisely are they going to use it. And quite frankly, if it's a neutral tool, which I believe it is, even though it has great possibility for abuse, the tool itself is neutral. I believe that we need to understand how it's used. We need to understand how it's affecting our congregation members and other people, and we need to use it as wisely as possible. So I'm diving in, and as I discover anything new about it, whether it's values or it's cautions, I will let you know. And I'll see you back here at some point or another, and we'll talk about AI again.